Good evening, everybody, and thanks for tuning into another one of my videos. So today we are going to hear Nicole Sauce speak on underground networking. As you can see from the picture in the background, this was done at one of the Survival Podcast workshops. This one was from the 2021. And just kind of as a side note, you can see from the picture that this isn't just a bunch of people that are interested in some of the topics we discuss, anything from business to crypto to preparedness to making and growing your own food. But this is basically a family. These are people that came because of a common interest and just merged into this group of people that just tend to spend their time looking out for one another. Lucky you, if you feel like you want to join into the community, these workshops are open for public sale. So Jack opens his workshop to anybody that wants to come. You just got to make sure you get in at the right time to get a ticket. And Nicole also offers a workshop. So look into either one if you're interested in just expanding your community a little bit and getting to know some more like-minded people. As you will hear later in the video, about midway through, there's going to be a small cut. Some things only get shared with family, so if you want to be part of the secret, show up to one of the events. We'd love to see you there. With that, take it away, Nicole. Not sure if you know this or not, but there's actually another great website for videos that doesn't deal with a lot of the censorship that you deal with on YouTube. If you're interested, and as a favor to me, please go over to odyssey.com and subscribe to my channel there as well. You'll find the link in the description below. Thanks.
Nobody's gonna stand in my way. Give it up, son, I'm doing this my way.
Meaningless. So as I started thinking about how glad I was during a time of shortages that made no sense coming through, that I could find, if you needed wheat, which I know we just learned we're not supposed to eat, but if you needed wheat, did you know where to get it? If it wasn't in the stores? You know where you got it, right? Jack knows. Brew supply stores had it. Feed stores had it. You know who didn't have it? Walmart. Walmart did not have it. Well, how did I get that information? He got it by thinking about, where does one get rain? I know where you get grain.
Grain store.
I'm not going to say that on my show tomorrow, or else they'll be out too, and then all the brewers will be sad. Is that basically what happened?
Yeah, I didn't do it.
Yeah.
I didn't do it. I didn't want to fuck it up.
So when we think about underground networking, it already exists. It's all around us, and it's already been here. But there's something interesting about an underground network. As the tyrants get stronger, as there are more pieces of power put over our lives, as we have more top-down control, you know what happens to the underground network? It blooms. It's a beautiful thing to watch. And if you go back and start looking at examples in history, the first thing that comes to mind, actually, I don't know why that's there. Oh, okay, missing a slide. First thing that comes to mind is what? The Underground Railroad. The first thing you're going to think of. And then you dive into the history of that, and you hear all about Harriet Tubman making hundreds of trips to get slaves from plantations up into the north, into liberation, at a time when even in the north, if you got caught, what happened? Sent back. And then as you dive into that, and you look at who was helping, there were some interesting threads that happened. Quakers. We've all heard how the Quakers helped, right? Like, you pretty much knew if you went to a Quaker farm, you'd be good, right? No. The Quakers disagreed. Different communities of Quakers disagreed on the role that they would have. Some Quakers were part of the Underground Railroad and moved people and provided safe havens along the way as they followed their passion to freedom. And other Quakers believed they shouldn't get involved in that worldly thing. And still other Quakers thought it was wrong to take property, even though they kind of thought slavery wasn't a good idea, and would report on their neighbor. And the only way, what was the only way you knew which Quaker to go to? You have to know somebody that knows somebody. And then you look at how they communicated. And this is something, when you dive into it, there's a lot of debate. So some PhD somewhere is arguing about this, and I don't care. If you look at African music and how Africans, early tribal Africans, communicated, they had what was call and repeat as a standard. So if you dive deeply into that, somebody comes up with an idea and says, I love freedom. And then somebody else says, I love freedom. And then they go back and forth and this call and repeat. And in this way, people learn through the beauty of song and melody. They learn story. They learn information. They remember things. Did anybody ever memorize the 50 states with a song or do anything like that? I have a song about states. That's the reason I can name all 50 of them in alphabetical order. I can say it. You don't know I'm singing the song. You know what's going on in my head, right? The song. Yeah. If I get off rhythm, I get all screwed up. That was the same way that happened. And that happens from culture to culture to culture, that we're passing down information via story and via song. Well, in the Underground Railroad, we had spirituals seemingly about God. Follow the drinking gourd. There's a spiritual, follow the drinking gourd. And the code, if you knew the code behind that, somebody would put a drinking gourd out saying it's safe to go this direction. And so you would know, this is the day I'm somebody who's ready to escape. I can go that direction, and that's how I start my walk to freedom. Other spirituals talked about, if you're in trouble, go to the river. That meant stay in the water, because if the dogs are following you, it throws off the scent. So if you travel through the waterways, you won't be caught. And I think about that time, and I think about what we're facing now, and we have it so easy. Right now, there's an underground railroad to get to Mexico, where the COVID regs are not as high as here. Derek Brose is doing it. I just found out about it. And what he does is nothing illegal. All he does is say, join my caravan. Every couple of months, he's taking people over the border, helps them get through customs and into Mexico, comes back the other way when people want to come back. And apparently, if you're required to show proof of something, it's Mexico. And you know what else happens in Mexico? You get pulled over, and you've done something wrong, and you say, is there a way we can make this better? That's probably not entirely legal, but it's part of the culture, right? It's part of the culture. You learn that, and you may not like it if you're an American who has been prudishly raised to think bribes are bad, but a lot of countries run on bribes. So that's the one example. The next example I thought of is one that erupted in the 80s when I was in school. And it was the result of the Prague Spring. And the Prague Spring came out of a music festival. So again, when the government and tyranny is at its height, so communism, and they backed off a little and allowed a music festival in Prague. And it was to play some kinds of music that was not necessarily officially sanctioned. Then they said, oh shit, what have we done? And they cracked down again. What came out of that were musicians and artists feeling empowered to get their work out of the Eastern Bloc and into the world. You know, terrible music like rock and roll, that's not going to do well here in the Eastern Bloc, right? From there, the underground network that happened it started in support of creativity. Somebody would write a poem that would never make it through the propaganda review for art. And they would type it in a pamphlet with a typewriter. And that would be delivered to a special hub home. Let's say Jack Spirko's is the hub home. He had a typewriter, or he had access to one. And included would be instructions on how to replicate this, and you wouldn't even necessarily know who the author was. So this is very secretive. And it would say, please type this as accurately as possible. And he might type 10 copies and spread those out. And then those 10 people would spread it out. And this is a time or a place where not everybody has a typewriter. This is something that's very controlled, but they still got the message out. And they set up a system to protect the people at the core of the content for these pamphlets, which were produced into the 80s. It's called samizdat. They were produced into the 80s and went from not just art and poetry to this novel concept. It was a novel concept. They would report what was going on in their countries without any spin. I wish we had them here. So it wasn't pro or anti-communism. It was just this many people protested and they were beat up. This artist was taken away and they haven't been seen again. And so it would have a combination of poetry and creative writing and maybe even some musical instruction and the news. And then it got out of the country and was called Tamizdat. And that's how we on the West were starting to get a better view of what was really happening on the other side, what was happening to the people, what it was like. And in the 80s is when it came to fruition, what happened in the late 80s. It happened because of an underground network. And people in this underground network didn't know everybody else in the network. They just knew when they got this pamphlet to follow those instructions. And they knew a guy. Is it because of this one thing that happened? No. There are so many stories out of the USSR and then the resulting crumble where you see multiple layers of underground networks at play. World War II comes to mind. I am not a World War II scholar, but I understand that there was a French resistance in World War II. In the early 40s, the Germans wanted to force labor, to take young men, and force labor to produce things. It wasn't concentration camp labor, but it was forced labor, and young men who were not on board with that idea or with what was happening ran into the woods, the scrub, le maquis, and they hid. And then cleverly, they got bored, I guess. They started undermining the Germans. And over time, these bands of people who were hiding and hidden became very effective at sabotaging things like supply chains. And around 1943, it went from the sort of like scrappy bunch of socialists and anarchists out in the woods, like doing stuff. It became more organized. The people who were the travelers, who communicated from one to the other and interfaced with the Germans and gained trust, got the information, and then brought it back so something could happen, were mostly women, because women were not as suspected of being the resistance as men. And so that was that role. In about 1943, a lawyer, I can't remember his name right now, codified their basic principles on a card that's about this big. So everything that they organized around could fit on a simple card. And then and it's interesting, so publishing comes back into it. That could be used to further organize. And by late in the war, in the north, there was a lot of sabotage, north of France. In the south, they were helping people escape who were being targeted by the Nazis. When Normandy was stormed for, I think, 48 or 72 hours before, some phrases that seemed to make no sense were just hurled over the radio that made sense to the French resistance so that they could help. And Germans, if you were caught by the French resistance when the tides were turning, do you know what happened to you? Very likely you're going to be beaten alive or tortured or killed. Germans started surrendering to the Allied forces just so they didn't get caught by those other guys. It's not all peace and love in the French resistance or in underground networking. I see them, though, as an incredibly powerful tool for peaceful revolution. But sometimes there is a place for violence. And I think that's what's hard about watching how society changes, is sometimes some of us may be on the wrong side of that. But there's hope. And there it is. It's in the wrong place. So, underground networking and counter economics. Do you know the easiest way to build trust with somebody besides looking them in the eye and building trust? Do business with them. If I have something for sale and I promise to give it to you, and you give me money and I give you the thing, or you give me something that's traded and I give you the thing, where's the trust bank account? It was here. It's gone up. If I over deliver, it's gone up a little bit more. There's a fruit fly. If I make a mistake and I make it right, where is that trust account?
Way up.
Way up. I have never understood why we talk about counter economics as a way to make money or a way to build prosperity separate from the relationships that we all build in a counter economic environment. It is community. It's simply we're focusing on the monetary interactions and the trade part of community, but I don't see how any relationship can exist without some give and take of some things. And whether it's hollow roast coffee, MSB, I don't know, we have some CBD products back there. Unless the goose stickers that sucker you're giving away for free. He's giving those away for free, but is he getting something in return for that?
They weren't made by me.
Who were they made by?
There she is, right there in the back.
All right. So, are you getting something for that that's different than money because you made a cool Endless the Goose sticker? Yep. What are you getting? Friendship and trust. When we put in to the environment, we get back, even though we aren't saying, I would like 14.5 cents for every sticker. So it doesn't have to be that transactional. And if we don't keep that community or those hands holding, then we miss the most important power of counter economics, which is are the relationships we make. And at an event like this, it's really important. And, you know, counter economics is talked about like it's this relatively new thing that kind of came out of the 70s. Jack's laughing. He is laughing, right? So there's two kinds of underground network here. We got networks with a face. And we got a couple faces with a couple networks here. One of them was really hard to get his skinny picture before. My mom, she puts up this picture of Jack and she says, is that Jack? I'm like, yeah, but he's half of that now. Let's try to find a different picture. So these networks, and that's the face. And then you have a network more like this. This is the underground railroad routes. There's maps of how people moved, right? And you didn't necessarily know who you were going to see along the way. It was more of a faceless interaction and a process. That's the faceless. But if you do not have the face, you do not get the faceless. How many people here know how to get hydroxychloroquine? How many people wonder how to get it and have been wondering it for a while and kind of want to? Wait, back to the people who know how? So in an underground network, you might have looked around when I did that and solved your problem. Just throwing that out there. So the face network is one where you develop direct relationships. You know a guy who knows a guy, but you know a guy. You might learn some code words in an underground network. Am I allowed to talk to the squirrel on live feed?
No.
Can you mute me?
Unmuted.
Okay, so that's
and
what
they're bitching on here.
that's
so.
what code words do.
Oh, Jack says tough shit.
Yeah, Jack says tough shit. That's how you keep your underground network secure, and you set the foundation and the expectation, and you make sure that every time there's an event like this, we have that conversation so the new people are empowered, and the people who aren't new on the live stream are right there on Telegram 2 minutes to 9 a.m. when he's going to release those tickets next time so they can actually hear this story, right? That's how you do that. And from there, when those standards come, you might build Talk to the Squirrel into a song. And then it means something to some people, and it doesn't mean anything to anybody else. These things happen organically. That happened organically, right? And so we have both a faced network, and you have the foundations of a faceless network. And the faceless network is the one where you bring in the process and you bring in steps that can be taken. And what happens when tyranny goes up?
Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon. another code I've understood happens there. So I am a strong proponent of building the in-person network. This is TSP 21 or 20. TSP 20.
Super spreader. TSP 21 will be just like that.
That's
tonight.
how it's going to be. This was like one night we're all cheers. Was it John Bush doing a selfie? He was making up freedom raps at the karaoke. We were having a great time. That also develops trust and commerce and counter economics, and it builds the foundation for an underground network. So let's dive into some roles here. These are the roles. As I said, there's hand in hand. What we have on this side is more locus function, and over here we have the people. And the first one you have is the easiest interaction you can have with anybody, which is trade. I'm wearing this shirt today. This says, I'm not participating in your new normal. You know who made this shirt? John Willis at SOE Tactical, Special Operations Equipment. And that man has his own developing underground network. And they're sick of all the crap, so they made this shirt. I love wearing this shirt. Look at the back. It's Guns and Gardens, as Jack would say. Jack's wearing the same shirt today. When we got up this morning, this was not planned.
No.
We both laughed and then realized what we're talking about today, and it's the perfect compliment. This is also a signal. I saw another SOE shirt out there. Who was it? Who's in an SOE shirt? You are. Okay. So Brian is in an SOE shirt, and I just saw the cock on the back. And I'm like, I can talk to him about some things because I've gotten more involved in the SOE network, and I now know, where do you live? Arkansas. I probably could ask him if I can sleep in his guest room on the way home. Would you say yes?
Sure.
See? That's because not only do we have this network, we have this network. And you know the people who make it in that network have each other's back. So you start with the trader, and John Willis is a trader. That dude can sell some product, and he makes a great product. Jack is a trader. He's also a teacher. I'm a trader. Raise your hand if you're a trader. Okay, so the next one is the traveler. How many of the people who trade move their own stuff sometimes? I brought my coffee down here. That travels. So the traveler goes from place to place. You can be more than one role in the network. The trader may not leave. They may just be in their locus and stay in the space. Jack. And the traveler may not be the trader. They may, think of the tinkerer with the wagon full of all the different things that they had for sale that they acquired as they went. But you know what else they trade in? The traveler trades in? Information. People get all up about, there's going to be an EMP and the internet's going to go down and we're never going to communicate to each other ever again. And I see John over there and they're like, I got ham radio on the generator, shut it. Right? The traveler brings letters. If there's no U.S. Postal Service, the traveler brings letters. That's what happened before. Or they can bring a message, or they can bring an item. And as I look back over history, I didn't find a time where the traveler doesn't exist. It's just harder when transportation is slower. When all you've got are your 2 feet, it's not as fast. If you have 4 feet and a horse, a little faster. If you can pull a cart, it's a little bit better. Trains come in, you're kind of stuck on those tracks, but it's a little bit better. Cars are fan-freaking-tastic because you can go anywhere as long as you got gas. So that's the traveler. So the traveler ends up facilitating communication and relations. Native Americans, before the Europeans really came in, had travelers. There are routes of how they would travel, and linguistically, there's this overlap thing that would happen. So there was usually somebody in the tribe who maybe had spent time in a different tribe who could translate, and as you traveled, it was interesting. They managed to communicate and get things done. I'm looking at Hawk because he perked up when I said Native American. Hawk was like, what? So that's the traveler. The partaker. The majority of people in our underground networks are partakers. What is that? These are the people who buy the things and don't go anywhere. It's not a bad role. These are the people just living their life. We need them. They're like, yeah, you can sleep on my couch or whatever. I'll feed you dinner, traveler. But they're the person being served by the trader and the traveler. I don't know why consumer is there. Evangelist. Evangelist. The evangelist is the one who gets us all on board in an underground network. Harriet Tubman is the evangelist. Harriet Tubman would dress up like an old lady in disguise because at some point they wanted to get her and fool them all. That was awesome. So the evangelist is somebody who gets your attention, holds your attention, gets your buy-in, tells you, shows you, this is a way we can go. Come with me. This is the way we can go. Is the evangelist a traveler?
Could be.
They could be, but they don't have to be. They could just have a podcast in Texas, Tennessee. You should be in Tennessee. Or Tennessee, also true. And they get people on board. They set standards. The evangelist is going to be like the lawyer who came up with that card and said, these are the principles. This is what unifies us. Come with me. Help me get other people. And if you're a good evangelist, you know what you do? There's another evangelist there. How many people see themselves as an evangelist in our network? We'll work on that. We'll work on that. The word consumer and the word partaker was something I wrestled with on this and finally went with partaker, but I forgot to delete that. So, shaman's another word you can use for the evangelist, by the way. Okay, so then we have the support system that has to be in place, which is communications and locus. I couldn't think of any other support system needed, and this is something I've been wrestling with for about 9 months, just to codify how do we work with underground networks and how do we help it grow, because guess what's happening right now with the power structures? Yeah, the power structures are growing. What needs to happen with the underground network? We need to get our A game on. If we get our A game on fast enough, we're all in a better position. The goal is not overthrow. The goal is empower, right? It's not tear down the wall. It could result in something like that, but it's empower everybody who we can empower to be free, to be self-reliant, to embrace love instead of hate, right? To know that most of what goes on in other people's lives is none of our business. You can live your whole life with somebody living a way you disapprove of, and it can do zero to you if you just realize it's none of your business. Communications can happen in a lot of ways. The cool thing about communications is we're no longer stuck with the typewriter, laboriously typing things. We're no longer stuck with the song, call and repeat. What do we have now? Control C and Control V. We've got a fantastic interconnection, unlike anything we've ever had before. This is why I have so much hope. Unlike anything we've ever had before, that if they shut it down, do you think it can stay shut down? Do you really think it can stay shut down? If I get Jack banned from YouTube because I said the word hydroxychloroquine 3 times on this video, do you think they're going to shut him down? Do you think he will get another 100,000 listeners in about 3 weeks? They can't stop it. That's why I don't worry about they anymore. What I worry about is this, the underground network. Who's the traveler? Who's the trader? Who's the partaker? Who else wants to be an evangelist and get out there and help other people see the people who are waking up right now? So we bitch about woke culture all the time. This has been the best awakening I have seen in my whole life, and I lived through the fall of the Berlin Wall. People are waking up and realizing, holy crap, this is messed up. we've been very dependent on something that's completely fake, and now it's falling apart, and I'm screwed. What do? That is the best opportunity we have to have twice as many people here. It will never happen because Dorothy would kill me if that happened, and kill Jack as well. But there'll be more events like this. Every time I hear somebody saying, hey, I kind of want to do this self-reliance kind of workshop thing, will you talk to me about yours? Yes, I will. I'll talk to you about budget. I'll talk to you about profit. I will talk to you about logistics. I will share a spreadsheet with you that will make no sense to you, but it totally works for me. But I'll be happy to share that with you. You know why? Because if we have 100 of these on this weekend in this country, what does that mean?
It's 8,000 people.
It's 8,000 people who are not worried about how much toilet paper they can buy at Walmart next week. Who have woken up.
Hey, we got so much toilet paper. We got toilet paper for all of y'all.
Yep. You know, during the toilet paper shortage, every time one of my friends on social media who was waking up said, oh my God, I can't get toilet paper, I would write, would you like me to ship you some? Not a single one of them took me up on it. One said, when I get home tonight, if I still haven't found it, yes. And then they found it. But what better way to empower people to understand how important it is to take care of yourself and your community than to ship them toilet paper when they're about to melt down to paper towels? It's the best. But it is. So it's the great awakening of people. And why I felt so compelled to talk to you all about this today is we are here together and we can work out communications. The way I see locus, so location, there are hubs of people. So Tennessee, raise your hand. Okay, we got good Tennessee representation. Texas, raise your hand. No surprise, there's more Texas than Tennessee here, but not much. I'd just like to point that out. You know why? Because Tennessee knows that they need to talk to Texas. And the best way to talk to Texas is here, in front of the squirrel t-shirt. Missouri, raise your hand. 2 from Missouri. Who else do we have a big pod from? New York. 1. There's hope in New York. Oklahoma, raise your hand. That's right. So there are people everywhere. The best part about Locus is some of the places start developing a hub or a center. This is a hub, right? Jack Spirko's place is a hub. That doesn't mean you can just walk up to his gate and open it and not get your face eaten off by Charlie. But if he knows you're coming and he has time, he will talk to you, right? Yeah. Holler Homestead in Tennessee is a locus. Eric, how many times have you been to my house in the last year after moving there?
3-4 dozen.
3 or 4 dozen. Here's how that goes. Hey, Nicole, can I stop by? And I say yes, or I say no. And if I say no, I don't see Eric. And if I say yes, then he stops by. He might just be driving by and want to visit. He may want to buy some chickens from me. He may want to just hang out, come to an event. He has dug a really difficult to dig ditch one time, and that's giving to the network, right? He doesn't come and say, hey, would you build my house? But I bet if he ever builds a house, there's going to be a Get Shit Done event at his house, and we're going to help him out. Right, Tennessee? Yeah. On my way down here, I did not buy a hotel. You know where I stayed? Sean Mills. Do you know how powerful that is when you're traveling by yourself in a world where it's unpredictable where stuff's going to happen? I know I have one safe place to be, and I get to talk to people I like. Sleep, leave, and they're not mad when I'm like, it's 5:30, I'm out this morning. I'm out, right? That's all about locus. And so we start developing hubs. What we can do here is talk about what other hubs there are. We don't have to do it right now. But where else is there locus? Because once we have that, we figure out communication. Because you know who helps with communication is the traveler and the evangelist and anybody who can keep a network going if it gets torn down. So let's talk about communications. Communications isn't just a podcast coming out or ham radio or whatever. It's about structure of communications. The important thing is that we communicate principles and understand them. What does it mean to be in our underground network? When there's a mission, that we have an ability to communicate the mission. If the mission is, I want to try moonshine and I can't buy it at the liquor store because then it's not really moonshine, I might not communicate that or where I get it or how I get it on YouTube, right? But do I communicate in a different way? What do I do? What would you do if you hadn't tasted moonshine and you wanted to taste it in this room?
Go over that shelf.
Talk to a friend.
Talk to a friend who might have a friend.
I got some moonshine, by the way.
See, we're just solving problems today.
Put a sticker on it.
There are codes. Talk to the squirrel is a code for something that if you were here, you would have heard it, live streamers. But other codes come up. They can be built into song. We have different ways of referring to the jab that have turned into code because you get kicked off of networks that you want to be on if you say the wrong words. Apparently you have to be keto adjusted, not fat adjusted. Those things happen naturally, but guess what happens when there's more pressure from the tyrants? We get more serious about the codes. It's time to talk about some codes. Not because we're afraid, but because there's an opportunity to help everybody who is stuck in the city, who just woke up and realized, oh no, what do I do? Help them do a thing. We're not going to rescue everybody by just moving them out of the city real fast, but we can empower them to see a path from here to there. We can connect them with people who have land for sale. In my neighborhood, if land's going to go for sale, do you know who hears about it first? I do. I was giving a presentation last week on, at the exit and build thing that John Bush put on. And I said that, and what I didn't know was happening at that time is a neighbor was telling me, I think I'm going to sell my land. So I got done, after telling people, I always hear about it first, I got down, and I was like, oh, there's that text message. And I said, how much do you want? And they said, and I said, okay, we'll get it appraised first, and then we'll talk. It was a high number. So we can connect in that way, and if we know we need to be that conduit, we can be that conduit. Then there's the gray man. When there's pressure from the top and the underground network comes to be, and the Quakers are helping, but they're viewed as people who are not breaking the law, guess who the gray man is? The gray man is able to function in both worlds. The people who are vaccinated, who don't want mandates to come through. If you are cut off from supplies in Canada right now, you can't go into the grocery store without proof. That's who helps keep you alive if you are not on the right side of that for getting supplies. We need that. Gray man can be actually vaccinated, or they could be...
Papered up. Got a piece of paper.
You got to have the passport. And then facilitating travel. And this one, I think, has been where people get to and they stop. How do I get from here to Mexico or here to Germany where I have to have things that I don't have if I want to fly, for example? Is there a Freedom airline yet? No. Is there something conceived to do that? Yes. If I want to fly from Tennessee to Texas and a charter plane is offered to me, one seat for $1,000 instead of $600 to get here, do you know what I can do as the partaker and the traveler? If I have it, I can spend $400 more and empower that. Because the way we empower these alternative systems, the way we empower alternative medical support, we already have people being turned away from organ transplants because of a lack of that piece of paper. The way we can empower that is with our commerce choices. And I don't mean go be stupid and spend your life savings on a plane ticket to Texas. But be aware that alternatives are popping up. And if you have the alternative idea, share it. Here is the best place to brainstorm. So Underground networks have always been here, and that's the part of this presentation that was a little weird. I'm like, well, it's been there the whole time. It's right there. Can't you see it? You can see it, right? Did you see it before? You called it community, but what we are is an underground network that has a face. And there is already another part of our network that does not have a face, and that is developing very quickly as regulatory things come down. And the way you find out about it is by knowing a guy who knows a guy, learning the code, and then deciding what your role is so you can do what you can do to help empower that power. Because that's what we've got. It doesn't matter what they do if we've got that, because that gives us stability and power. And we've always had it. We just have to take it. I'm ready for questions.